Hey everyone, it's an honor to get the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Nathan. I'm an MBA 1, a theater artist, and an arts producer.
And my name is Danny, and I'm a current first year MBA and Master of Education student, as well as a former public school teacher.
I'd like everyone to take a moment and think of who your heroes were in history class. Every child has heroes. These heroes serve as an aspirational anchor, an anchor of how they see themselves and who they hope to be. When I was growing up, I just didn't have that. The other kids looked up to the founding fathers or American presidents as proof of their own superhuman capabilities. I got the sense that because of these figures, others felt they were more capable of great things. I just didn't have that experience. As a Black queer kid, I never saw myself in the history books and felt a sense of other during my education. Our history is absent from the history books, and it's like we as a community are invisible and doomed to achieve the least.
And this is unfortunately not a unique experience and is something I saw frequently as a teacher. The impact of excluding Black queer history shows up when we consider three compounding facts: the fact that there's a growing LGBTQ community, limited to no queer history taught, and a lack of teaching resources for educators. Some quick research we did tells us that a lack of representation limits LGBTQ young people's perceptions of their future trajectories. And this discrepancy can be exemplified by data around culturally responsive curriculum. So, qualitative data from the Human Rights Campaign urges adults to take active roles of support toward this endeavor. And among the top action steps is elevating Black queer narratives. Others emphasize the need for tools to advocate on behalf of our Black queer youth. Today, we'd like to highlight a study conducted by the San Francisco United School District and the Stanford Graduate School of Education. This study monitored academic metrics of 1,405 minority high school freshmen registered in a pilot ethnic studies course, and the impact on student outcomes was significant. A 1.4 increase in GPA, 21% increase in attendance, and 23 more credits earned by students overall. This study demonstrates what us educators know to be true. Students need to see themselves in what they learn. They need accessible and relevant information and knowledge to stay engaged in what they learn.
To address this challenge, we present Plucky Comics. Plucky Comics is a web app that tells the story of Black queer historical figures through the medium of comics. This is an education tool that teachers can use in the classroom to provide essential information in an innovative and creative way. Alongside the comics, which research shows is an effective way for students to learn new information, students can click into individual speeches, stories, and writings from each of these individuals to learn about how they lived and what contributions they made to our society. Whether in class or at home, students will be able to access this web app from a Wi-Fi enabled device. This project is meant for all students to learn about history that can help empower them and think more critically about the impact they hope to have in the world.
To provide innovative storytelling, we envision our product with the following design. Students will view a dashboard showcasing an array of grade level stories, and each comic features the figure's identity and activism. From left to right, students will scroll through the graphics while being prompted to engage in the reading through a series of interactive features. These can include written, oral, or pictorial responses to inquiry-based questioning. For instance, when learning about Gladys Bentley's musical contribution in the Harlem Renaissance, a high schooler would be prompted to explain what role her Blackness played in her success as an entertainer, or perhaps how her gender bending appearance influenced the way her audience perceived her.
We've built a budget to address the costs of the prototype. We project a $10,000 total budget, which includes everything from web app development to comic artist fees. We're exploring revenue models and believe that the best model will be a freemium web app structure that will allow new students to access free content, but additional content can be purchased by subscription or individual purchase. We are considering ad revenue as part of this model and will sell merchandise that uses the images from the comics. Our long-term goal is to develop a school district licensing plan to make the content accessible through school systems. The freemium structure mimics other EdTech tools and makes access easy for students, teachers, and parents. Our timeline highlights our goals over the next year. In May, we will find a third member of our team who has a background in tech and product development to build our innovative web app. During this month, we will identify artists who can build the first comics. These comics will be released during Pride Month, June, and serve as a continuation of work we have already done on social media to understand interests in Black queer history. We will also identify a number of classrooms to get feedback directly from students. In summer and fall 21, we will begin work on the web app and prototype and test in classrooms we have identified. We plan for our web app to go live in February 2022, just in time for Black History Month, when there is particularly high interest in this topic. We will then continue to build content through the first half of 2022 and ensure the content aligns with curriculum standards.
To ensure curriculum alignment, we interviewed teachers. And when we did, the message was clear. Our students deserve an accurate representation of themselves in history. One teacher stated that while Black history is underrepresented and queer history is underrepresented, Black queer history is invisible. As a former teacher, I know firsthand the critical role that representation plays in the lives of our youth. As the only Latina teacher in a school with a 48% Hispanic student population, I can recall my Latina students telling me how they finally like school simply because I was there. And just as present day role models make differences in our lives, learning that historical trailblazers existed and made differences in the world should be provided for the next generation of students.
We hope that after both students and adults read these comics, they can learn more about the heroes that we're missing from their curriculum, and hopefully, through that process, learn more about how to use their own voices. Thank you for your time today, and we welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you. This is really just such an important product. Representation is so important. So I have a few questions. One, what is the age that you are gearing this product to? I know, it sounds like K through 12, but what age are you starting with?
Yeah, so our plan, well, we've spoken to high school teachers first, who said that they can show our initial comics to their classroom, but the goal is to make like a single set of comics available to elementary, middle school, and high school. Basically adapt a single set of comics to different grade levels.
Okay, and so those would be rolled out simultaneously, you're thinking?
I'm thinking starting with the older students, just because those are the classrooms that we have that are accessible. And also, Danny, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like the easiest to kind of like prototype and show.
Yeah, no, that is accurate based on our teacher interviews. We also interviewed some middle school teachers who'd be really excited to prototype this in their classrooms. And it seems as though for middle school and high school, those curriculum standards would overlap a little bit more than elementary would. So it would make sense for us to start in the high school and middle school levels first.
Got it. And is there a similar type of product for, I know that there isn't a product for Black queer youth, but for Black youth or for other underrepresented groups that you can point to?
So there is a tradition of queer comic books that has existed now for several decades, but there is no like comic focused app learning tool that it currently exists. I guess like the products that I've seen that teachers are using now are essentially like just downloading a comic book on your Kindle, and students will just go through it in that way.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a couple of questions. So first, this is amazing, and I first want to ask the art. Who did the art?
So we worked with a designer to do some of the images that you see here on this page. The middle one is actually an artist we just met on Instagram, and I absolutely love his work. So me and Dana are going to try to work with him to develop our first stories.
Wow. And how have you been able to pay for the content thus far?
So far, I worked with the Spectrum Center, the LGBTQ center here on campus. I got an $800 grant to build the initial portraits you see here, and also they hope to pay for some of the portraits that will release during Pride Month this year.
Got it. And so you mentioned that you've been speaking to high school teachers, middle school teachers as well, and that was some of your customer discovery. Do you have a sense of like who specifically your first target customer would be?
Danny, do you want to handle this one?
Yeah, I think that I really think that we would need to define that a little more because we have lots of different ideas. So do you mean this is a tool that would be both interactive from the teacher's perspective and from the student's perspective? So we're really hoping for input on both sides. Something that we've been discussing in depth, but just didn't get a chance to put it on the deck, is that teachers would be able to interact with this by having monitoring and tracking features. So typically, if you've been a teacher before or someone that you know has, typically EdTech apps have features like that for teachers, right? Whether you want to assign something specific to a student or whether you want to be able to view what students write down or input into a system. I know I use that a lot. And so this would be a tool in which we would want to prototype knowing who our teacher and who our students are going to be. That way we can ask for feedback on both ends.
Got it. Thank you.
Dana and Stacey, we probably have time for like 1.5 more questions if you have them.
Okay, so in terms of the I guess the long-term plan for this, you talked about you know, you need this budget for this freemium model, but can you talk a little bit more about how you see this rolling out and long-term, how you see this operating?
Yeah, so our long-term goal is to develop relationships with school systems to really like embed this into school curriculums. This comes from an understanding that there are like no queer history tools out there that currently exist. So this is a way for them to like easily like supplement their curriculums or make this even the like main player in their discussion of queer history. There are like 5 states right now and counting that require queer history within their curriculums. So yeah, the long-term goal is to like develop relationships with school systems and sell in that way.
And do you know who you'll target first?
We'll start with those first 5 where LGBTQ history is required, and then start to work through the like more liberal-minded school systems in the United States. With that said, a lot of the teachers that we spoke to were from Southern states and found that they wanted to find additional tools that could help them teach their students and also teach themselves as teachers about Black history and queer history.